So you and I were originally talking about the dynamic effort, and that guy crushed it. Like, can we want to start there before we dive into all the other things I want to talk about?
You mean my guy?
Yes, your guy, your guy.
Well, like anything else, all the credit goes to the athlete, right? Believing in a plan, exposing somebody to new training modalities, new training methods, I guess you could say, and something that I think is imperative to any coach, regardless of what space they're in, is what are you willing to accept to be the norm,
Mm.
and what are you willing to express? Is there something better, maybe, right? And that's where I'm sure you've probably heard me say this in other conversations, but I try to remind younger coaches who live in this regurgitation age of repeatability of someone else's information is, I want your opinion. I don't want what Joe Kenn says or Coach Justin Lima says. I want you to study what's available and then have the wherewithal, the mind frame, the want to figure out how you see that concept, or how can you evolve that to make it your own. Because in the end, 99% of what we create is probably based off of information that someone else has provided us. And I always tell people, if you're not reading between the lines, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because the answer generally lies in between what the information is being presented to you and your interpretation of that information, not your regurgitation of that information, how you interpret that. And I think that's I mean, I don't know if it's a lost art, because I don't know how many people really look at things like that. I think that I don't even know when I started calling it read between the lines. I just read people's stuff and figured out, okay, how does this work for me?
Yes.
And even if I believe in it, right? Because again, at this point in my career and in my, for the most part, programming journey, there's just certain things that aren't going to resonate with me, and that doesn't mean that they shouldn't resonate with you. Like, you shouldn't just say, well, House thinks that's BS, and you know who House is. Yeah, that's not work, because there's too many programs that have won too many championships, right? There's too many programs that have been super successful, because to me, it's not the program, it's the belief and the enthusiasm that the programmer has displayed to their athletes. If you get somebody who's regurgitating a template because it's the next best thing, like, oh, I'm using the Westlight template, or I'm using the Coach Lima template, or I'm using Big House's tier system template, but you really haven't studied what that template entails, though, especially in this day and age, these athletes will expose you. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about the exposure factor in this day and age. Is whether it's uh, bro science, whether it's people who coach no one, but because of a fake following on Instagram or Twitter, everybody thinks they have all the answers. There's information that's going to cause debate. Like, I laugh at some of the things that a couple of the posts that I put out recently, some of the, and this is why I don't respond a lot, is some of the people who comment. It's like, do you not have any open mind? And again, it's one person's opinion out of a million different opinions. I'm telling you what my truth is. It doesn't have to be your truth. I don't ever want anybody 100% of the time to agree with me. I'm up for a whole big, not even a debate, just a discussion of different philosophies. Like, again, one of them was, I said you shouldn't do a bench press if you can't do a push up, and everybody's like, that's stupid. You're a dork. You can do dumbbells, and you could do a bar, because if you can't maintain your own body weight, you can do lighter loads. I'm not saying you're wrong, but guess what? I know you still can't do a push up. You see, like, it's just little things like that I'm like, golly, man, these people just want to just say something to say it. And I'll always go back to that, right? Everybody's entitled to an opinion, but my question is, who are you coaching? And let me
Yes.
see how your athletes look before you're judging a process that I know works, because I've seen it work, and I've seen let's be honest, numerous high schools implement this type of concept and have tremendous amount of success when their kids are more than prepared to squat over 500 and deadlift over 500 and clean over 300 in the high school setting with extreme competent technique. So going back to my athlete, my athlete's a strength coach. He's a full-time strength coach at a Division I university trying to be a professional strongman. So he's been, obviously you would like to think he understands programming. But like anything else, what the coach sees, sometimes the athlete doesn't see. And when you, like, when you come up through what I call these family trees, you study enough to know about, okay, this person started under this guy or this woman. This is their methodology. And then you look to see how people have adapted. That's one of the things that I really respect about Nick DeMarco is I know his background, but yet when I go watch when I've watched him coach and how he programs at Elam, you can see he took what he learned where he started and exploited that to create, I don't want to say a better model, but a different model, maybe more advanced in some ways than the model he was exposed to. And that to me shows me that here's somebody who cares enough not to just take what worked, but try to make it better. Same thing with, I know what Joey G, where his lineage comes from. And then I watch the things that he does and I'm like, all right, I can get whether or not I understand everything these guys do, or I can get behind guys who are like, these guys understand what I believe is right. Take what you learned, put it on steroids for the lack of a better term, right? Get it some special supplements and then it's like anything else, meat and potatoes, and they're putting the cherry on top of the stuff they learned. And that's something that, I hope to bring to Tom's programming was, I saw how you've trained in the past for this sport. I know your background. Now I'm going to show you what. And again, is this a little cockiness or arrogance? Maybe, but I know how people perceive me.
Sprintember is a month that Coach Mike Tucker made so that way strength and conditioning coaches can get outside and start sprint training themselves. During the month of Sprintember, right now, you can save $100 off the new Fundamentals of Sprinting, a complete biomechanics course brought to you by Jeff Moyer. Most speed programs show drills, cues, or outputs. Few show you how to actually analyze mechanics and make real changes. That's where Jeff's Fundamentals of Sprinting course comes in. This has been built on 10 years of studying under Dr. Michael Yessis and working with athletes from high school all the way to the pros, and this course goes far beyond theory. It gives you the framework, tools, and applied methods to transform how your athletes sprint. Inside, you're going to get an introduction to sprint biomechanics, a history lesson, learn from some of the experts in sprint biomechanics like Dr. Michael Yessis, Dr. Verkoshansky, Nikolai Bernstein, understand joints of muscles of sprinting, coach's eye, assessment of sprints, injuries, profiling, transfer of training, all of this inside this course, and you can save $100 with the code SPRINT100. All capital, SPRINT, no space, the number 100, SPRINT 100. To learn more information about this course, click the link down below, and remember, use the code SPRINT100 to save $100 on this course, but this discount is only available during the month of Sprintember 2025.
Of what elite level programming looks like. And I will tell you this, I've learned a lot. Training strongman is not training team sport athletes. It's just not. So there's a lot of things you can do with N=1 and knowing that these athletes in their own right have really learned how to manipulate what I call the fight or flight syndrome of doing things that we were supposedly never been able to do under normal circumstances versus critical, displays of strength under severe circumstances. And this is what they've done. This is what CrossFitters have done. They've proven time and time again what we've heard in our classrooms. The human body can't do this. The human body can't do this. But yet one person does it, and now everybody else's mindset is it can be done. And then they exploit these things. So with Tom, it was pushing him to a level that he hadn't been to before. A lot of it was volume of accessory work, conditioning, and then training for a specific strength type or strength discipline or whatever you want to call it that has been spoken about, but I don't know if we looked at it in the correct way when it comes to every lift you perform in the weight room. And that is what people are chasing now, or peak velocity, or just moving things as fast as you can, and then evaluating that from the same perspective. And like we discussed, one of the things that I think we just automatically dove into because most of us were exposed to it when it came to dynamic effort method or speed training with non-Olympic lifts was utilizing average velocity as a gauge. And again, I'm not here to tell you that average velocity still doesn't have its merit. It does. But what I'm saying is we can't keep criticizing certain lifts based off of what we thought they were in the past if we're going to utilize similar principles out on the field and discuss the same points, but yet when we go in the weight room we're not discussing the same points anymore. And I think that's where, again, I would like to think that as this becomes more of a discussion point, that we would like to be at the forefront of the paradigm shift. But I hope more people at least contemplate what I'm talking about utilizing peak velocity as a measurement, because I've seen two things. One, it's easier to coach than average velocity because the coaching point is very simple. It doesn't matter how much weight is on the bar. You move the bar as fast as you can. Your mindset is, regardless of what's on the load, can you get from A to B as fast as you can? And guess what? Doesn't matter what exercise it is. And then it becomes as simple as you continue to do that, and then every average chart you use is now going to be skewed because those averages are going to change because the intention of the movement is changed. And the greatest thing is, I don't believe there's ever going to be a chart. Like I just randomly, literally, this is N equals one, anecdotal, practice based evidence, right? Like this isn't evidence based. This is me practicing and creating my own evidence based off results that I saw as a lifter and how I could see this corresponding with team sport athletes is if I continue to move light weights as fast as I can, I'm going to start moving what used to be heavyweights as fast as I can. And if I continue to move heavyweights faster, well, automatically I'm going to be able to lift more weights. And if I can move a percentage of load faster as a team athlete, doesn't that benefit me more than training a heavier load at average speeds when and again, we've had this discussion a couple of times now, is everything has to fit buckets, and the buckets have to be similar. It's just like people. And I'm one of those that believes in. I don't think there's sport specific weight room exercises. Like I won't tell you, but what I do believe is you can train those weight room exercises, and you can change loads, intent, tempos, duration, rest times to simulate metabolic demands that happen on the sport. That I've always said that. That's why when people always ask me, how come your goal is to like get, we could get 66 sets of work done in an hour with a football team because it's relative to what is going to happen to them on the field. They're not getting full recovery. They're just not. And for me, it becomes, how can I maintain what I call power capacity of maintaining the highest levels of speed and explosiveness as your relative fatigue changes every single play or event that you do. And that's where I think a lot of times when people have this debate with the high intensity training methodology versus the percentage based or periodized program, is people have to understand that we're looking at two different types of intensity. And this is where this peak velocity becomes a lot more from a psychological standpoint too. Is so when you listen to high intensity training coaches, they'll always talk about we're training at max intensity every single set, every single rep. You're right, you are. But yours is intensity of effort. Where when we train, we're training a specific percentage, whether it's based off of data from a VBT or percentage of max on a typical Prilipin's chart of periodized program. But the difference, but what we know, but what we're also teaching now is not only are we training at a percentage of load, I'm still asking you for that same intensity of effort for every single rep, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So there's a big difference in when people talk about, well, the difference between, I remember a long time ago at a hammer strength clinic, we were talking about how we developed the percentages based off of heavy, moderate, light to make the session for a tier system day the moderate, because that seemed to be the best intensity range to have a quality workout. And the next speaker came after me was an HIT guy, and he said, well, the difference between how we do things in Coach Kenn is they're training at a moderate percentage, and we're training at 100%. No, you're not. You're training at a different percent. You're training at a different intensity. So I rebutted back with,
here at Strength Coach Network, we pride ourselves on giving you the best quality information from strength and conditioning coaches and practitioners that still work with or have worked with athletes. This is not theory. We are always about giving you practical information that you can apply day one the minute you're done listening to this. And you can check us out for a $1 trial in the link down below. Click that link and find out more about us.
I'm training at the same intensity of effort you are. We're just training at a specific load. And at that point in time, I had no understanding of dynamic method, moving ball. I was still under the concept of you did Olympic lifts for explosiveness and fast. You did power lifts for being strong.
Yep.
As the concepts erode, now I really understand the combination of the two. So the truth is, all that I've kind of come up with from this concept of peak velocity and intentions is just taking what we've all said we were doing, right? Training dynamic effort and training for speed and explosiveness, but really training for speed and explosiveness with the same concept being at mind. And again, if you're going to tell me we're going to go to the field and measure peak acceleration or max velocity or max acceleration and how fast somebody runs miles per hour, then why aren't we tracking that in the weight room? Why are we tracking average? And again, this is just one coach's experience over time who was one of the first to use VBT in the first place. Again, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm not anti. I help bring this stuff. And again, I can say this with a high value of validity. I'm one of the first ones to bring this into the college setting. I mean, some of these coaches haven't even been born when we were bringing this stuff in. Yep. And these are and I studied and talked to the individuals who brought these things into the process. I didn't just read their stuff. I went and visited it and talked to these individuals. So the concepts become what can you convince, and again, this is Jedi mind tricking or things like that, but what can you convince your athletes the relevance of why to do it? And in any sport, regardless if it's a strength sport like CrossFit, strongman, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, or if you're training a team sport, there's not anybody who's not going to tell us they don't want to be more explosive, whether it's a coach telling you that in a staff meeting or an athlete who comes in at their post year meeting and say, coach, I need to get more explosive. And it doesn't matter if they already have a 40-inch vertical jump. So for me, it became this challenge of, again, I'm not challenging the system. I'm challenging us to be critical thinkers. Like, hey, I'm not saying jump on the bandwagon. I'm just saying listen, because there is something here. I've seen it now. I've seen it at a level of a full 12-week training block. And I showed you some of the training clips.
Yep.
where the guy's moving light weights extremely fast and moving weights that we think are heavy very fast. And it paid off in competition. We couldn't have asked for a better result. I mean, you're going against 16 of probably the top 25 athletes overall in strongman. It's by far over 8 events, could be recognized as the heaviest competition in the history of strongman. And we hit the podium, and going into the last event, the points were that the gentleman in first place had 81 and a half points. The gentleman who was in second place at the time, who wound up winning, had 80 and a half. And then our guy, Tom, was at third at 80. So he still had a legitimate chance to win this event going into the last event. And this is where like concurrent sequencing comes in, because not only was he the most explosive he was the most durable. For the first time in his career, he had to finish the last event to secure the podium. If he finishes, he had never finished it before. He's never finished it. And this year he finished with very, not that the implement loads were not that the implement loads were heavy then, but they were so unorthodoxly made. Yeah. It was weird. It was very hard for these guys to control this. So you go through 8 events and you PR in 8 events at the heaviest load. Again, the athlete performed at, you couldn't have asked for a better, and we had an extreme team. Like, this doesn't just, it doesn't come down to just a program. We had a secondary assistant coach who helped us with event-specific technique and some of the, not necessarily some of the programming, but me being able to call somebody with higher expertise than I do in the sport and just bouncing off enough ideas to give me the affirmation, the confirmation, and confidence to relay this back to the athlete. And then that coach was the handler on game day. We had a coach that was on site that was able to help with taking the weights off and helping save fatigue. We had a nutritionist, and we had a sports psych coach. So we had the entire package to go into this and give it our best efforts. And our goal, my particular goal, was if we could finish all 8 events in the top half, we would put our position to have a really good competition. And our goal going in was to secure an automatic qualifier for next year. So that was top 5. Well, when you think of top 5, you're like, man, a couple of more spots, you're on the podium holding a trophy. And if anybody coaches individual strength athletes, winning it always supersedes anything. But to get on a podium, that is monstrous. And when it's your first podium as a professional, that's even more monstrous. So we were in position. We wound up being 6 out of 8 on our goals. We had 6 top 8s, a 9th and a 10th. So we didn't have any poor events. Like, we were still within that top half. But when it came to overall points, we never was below 4th place the entire event. And there was at one point where there was 6 people within 2 points for several events. Like, it was so close. You couldn't have asked for 16 athletes to be so prepared and so well conditioned that at times it was like, hell, this guy in 8th place, he wins the next event, he could go to 1st. And our goal was just chip away, be very strategic. If we hit our numbers, we were very fortunate too, because this is why it's very hard for these strongmen a lot of times to peak at the right times if they're not paying attention to training, because we set it up where our biggest loads that we hit were going to be in the meet. Like, we weren't going to touch loads that were strenuous up to a point where we may have peaked too early. And that came to be our benefit, because in the 2 static strength events, the log clean and press and the trap bar deadlift, we wound up placing 3rd in events going in on paper, we should have placed fifth or sixth.
Vacations are meant for you to be outside doing things that you love and reconnecting with your family and your friends and recharging your battery. It is not meant for you to travel and listen to some coach talk in a conference hall and eat some food that you know really isn't the best thing that you want to be eating. Take back your vacations and do so with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. When you purchase an annual membership, you're going to get access to our course, Performance Coaching 101. In the subsequent years, it'll renew and you'll get access to 102 and 103. Each year, you're going to get access to 2 NSCA CEUs and 10 CSCCa CEUs. These CEUs will allow you to be able to learn from the comfort of your office. You'll be able to earn CEUs on your time rather than having to travel. Take back your vacation and be able to do this with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. Click the link down below for more information.
Because we knew where our ranges were and we hit those ranges. And the other guys, like I saw 2 guys press pretty close to the same amount of weight Tom did in training and missed those weights in the comp.
Ooh.
Where Tom pushed a weight that was a 20-pound PR in comp. And then the trap bar deadlift was new to everybody, but same thing. When we were going into our third lift, we made a strategic call for 1057 because if a couple of guys behind us missed, that number would put him ahead of their second attempts. So we would jump them. And sure enough, if everybody hits, he comes in fifth. Well, he pulls his 1057. Now, everybody behind him has to hit their number or he might win. So the 2 guys hit, 2 guys missed. He comes in third. You pick up 2 more points. So that's 4 points that we picked up. And again, I'm not saying this because I'm saying this is just a caution to everybody. Remember, posting a good lift on Instagram 3 weeks out of a meet could be a detriment to you hitting that number or more in a meet. Like we pulled 1 single. I think I showed you that. We pulled 1 single in the trap bar deadlift, and that was more because we had 1 bad week of training and we wanted to make sure we got that number in. But we never pushed a single on the log. What we did is our goal was, could we double his old max? And we doubled his old max plus 5 pounds. So we knew, all right, if this dude gets his shit right, sorry, we could have a big deal. And everything that I think happened was an occurrence of, in his mind at this time, it was move the bar as fast as I can. Regardless of what it may look like when you watch the video, in your mind, the intent is to never not thinking that you're pulling and pushing or throwing the bar with max intent. And I really believe that there's a lot more to the psychological aspect of that than I think the physical, because I remember personally when I first started my journey into this research into N=1, research into, hey, let me play with this peak velocity stuff and see how it dictates. And what I also think, and this is where the average comes in, I also think by stressing peak velocity, it gives you more validity with the average velocity scores when you start getting into those heavy triples and doubles and singles. And different exercise. And again, I think the other thing too we have to remember is, although it's good to have like a base chart to go by, if the base chart is based off of 1 lift, it doesn't help you with other lifts. Like doing squats and deadlifts, the numbers are different, especially what we've seen in the product that we use. It shows us where they hit the highest level of peak. So like in a squat, what I've found is if your athlete, regardless if it's chains, bands, or straight weight, if your athlete can hit peak velocity in that 80% or higher, so like above quarter squat, then they are really understanding acceleration. Like they are really forcing the issue of, I have to move this bar as fast as I can. But on the deadlift, it looks like it's in like the 60s and 70s. So we have to understand that. Just like in the deadlift, you can go into the point ones. You can go into the point ones average. In the squat, maybe, but we've seen point two is probably a better realization. We haven't done a whole lot on bench because we don't utilize bench that much in our training. We'll probably do that when we get in off season. But in the overhead press, it's a little bit different too. I haven't deciphered those numbers as much as I have the lower body and the total body stuff, because that's where, to me, everything's won or lost. And then so my quest would be for this, for coaches, is if you're using velocity based training, there's two things, and we've talked about both of them, is utilize what you've been doing with the average, but I don't like to use don't. Consider stressing peak and watch those averages change. Number one, watch those averages change. I do think that out of everything I've seen technology wise when it comes to the weight room, and I believe, and there are factions, I truly believe in a team setting specifically. This is the first time where generally when you have these pendulum swings, people are on the right, people are on the left, like, oh, percentages. No, we don't need percentages. Just use VBT. I truly believe that this is something that is a 50-50 partnership. I just think if enough people were willing to commit towards evaluating these numbers off of a percentage of load, I really think that all the graphs and all the data that's out there would have tremendous changes. Like, I know another colleague of mine who is a high level into VBT. He coaches elite level weightlifters. He's got different ranges for every exercise. Like, he's got a different graph for every exercise they use VBT on. And
Probably
you know
even
what?
based on the height of the athlete too.
Yes. I mean, there's so much other things going on here. And also, like we talked about, and it also goes down to what technique are you using? Mm-hmm. Because we all know a pause squat means a whole lot different to other people. Squat depth means a whole lot different than other people. A heaving bench press is different than a touch and go bench press, which is different than a pause bench press. You know, a jumping jack clean is different than a squat clean, which is different than a power clean. So there's so many considerations that I really think the data collection is very specific to your environment and how you teach. And if you do that, you'll have really good concepts for the athletes you work with. Because the truth is, what do you care what somebody else's athletes' data say when, and again, let's just be honest, you know their technique is not as competent as yours.
Yep.
We see it all the time, right? Like, hey, this guy's got 60 guys who squat 600. Why do we only have 9 guys squatting 500? Check the depth, coach.
Or where his hands are.
Or they're using a rep test, coach.
Powerlift has been my choice for strength and conditioning equipment ever since I got into the field. Right now, I still have their racks, I have their barbells, I have their bumpers, specialty bars, and we have the IMTP device at Goldfinch, and it's been great for us because it's allowed us to free up the rack where we used to have to do the IMTPs. Now we use that IMTP device, roll it around. We've created more space. You have to check them out. Doesn't matter if in your college, high school, pro, tactical, or private, they have the ability to make whatever customizations and whatever adjustments you need. I was a part of the weight room that was the 32 brand new rack facility at Iowa football. You see what they did for TCU football. Doesn't matter how big, how small, whatever your customizations are, Powerlift is number one in the exercise equipment space for a reason. Check them out in the link down below.
Yep. You know, so the questions are always out there to me. And again, I reserve the right to be wrong. I've always said that I know there's too many ways to skin this cat. But I also know that in this day and age of individuals talking about continuing to raise the bar, right? And continuing to push forward, if we're going to have this kind of information and we have all of this available to us, why did we just throw peak to the side when it came to strength lifts? It doesn't make sense to me when those same people who threw peak to a side to the strength lifts talk about how you don't need strength lifts, you just need to sprint and do certain other things. to get faster or whatever that may be. And then, like we talked about too, the other key to velocity based training is not allowing technology to dictate the loads when things come to failure. Because when you're in team sports, I don't care what anyone says, and I don't care to get into a debate on how to condition, but conditioning is an aspect in team sports.
Yep.
And like we talked about, the load that you're going to play against doesn't change. So why am I lowering loads because I didn't hit a number? That's not effective training when an athlete's going against the same size athlete, especially in contact sports.
Yep.
Multiple plays a game, and both sides of the field are fatigued. That's where you utilize this data to improve your athletes' metabolic demands to beat that athlete. And it's the same thing, even with your own body weight. Like, I'm not losing weight when I get tired. So if I play volleyball, how do I know I can maintain a high level of strength and power? And say we're using a squat or a clean, and we're adjusting. Oh, they didn't hit it. We got to lower the weight. Her body weight's not changing when she's an outside hitter. I expect her, if her approach jump is 32 inches in set 1, I expect it to be as high as possible in set 5. Yeah. And I won't know that if I'm not training her under a sense of explosive fatigue, so to speak. Hey, you're dropping off. We need you now. It's the 5th set, right? Like, I can't not pull 20 pounds off to move the bar faster, because you're not going to lose 20 pounds in a 5-set match.
Within this fatigue thing, I had another old head on that you'd appreciate. Bob Alejo was on just like 4 or 5 days ago. And he was kind of talking about this notion that strength coaches are they overvalue and will say that there's neurological fatigue before there actually is. He's like, do you really understand how hard it is to have somebody be that fatigued?
I say that all the time when I hear some of these strongman coaches about, oh, it's neurologically demanding. I go, do we even know what that means? Like, I mean, I coach guys that played 100 snaps at high levels. Like, I mean, I watched our defense against LSU. I think it was in 2005, the year after Katrina, maybe, where we played 19 consecutive snaps on defense. If there's going to be neurological fatigue, it's probably going to be on a 19-play drive in football. Yeah, I mean, Bob's great. Like, Bob's awesome, because Bob is the guy, and he's the first one I heard it from. Like, you got all these people telling you how they're recreating stuff, and Bob will always go, tell me what you're doing, I'll tell you what we used to call it. Yep. Right? Oh, no, that's called plyometrics. Like, it's not, hey, that's called squatting, right? Like, so, and again, and I've always said that. Like, when I hear these guys, oh, neural demands, neural fatigue. Yeah, it's going to take a long time to get to that point. And if your athlete is conditioned, I think it's going to take a longer time. And if your athlete's trained for the demands that we ask them to do, I think it's even going to take a longer time. So Bob and I, we generally say the same things, but in different ways. Yeah. And we tend to agree a lot more than we disagree. Although sometimes when we're talking, it sounds like we're debating each other. So I love a good conversation with Bob. And like, again, for you, like I said, for someone, the importance to me is, can I get validity from individuals who are not necessarily in my network, if that makes sense? Because as we all know, if you've got coaches that worked under you and you pass something on to them, there's a good chance they're going to accept it because of where it came from, right? Yep. Oh, House said do this, we're going to do it, right? Or Coach Lima said do this, we're going to do it. But when you pass it over to people who are respected in the field, have done a really good job of showing their value to the profession and what they bring to the table, and their curiosity is at high levels, right? That's the other thing, is reaching out to people who may have a set opinion now, but at least their curiosity for learning is high. Those are the people, if I can reach out to and give them my interpretation of this, and they think it's intriguing enough for them to want more information to see, that to me is all the validity I need. Like, okay, I've said this to a few people that aren't in my training tree, right? Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, wait a second, man, this kind of resonates with me. I want to learn more and I want to see what it's all about. And I have, and one of the guys that I sent it to is someone who uses a high level of velocity based training in the high school level. And he went through a session and he went back, goes, yeah, I've never felt like this before in a training session. So again, a lot of N equals ones. I'm trying to put together enough people from the research side, right? Because again, we all know that anecdotal, practice-based evidence is one thing, and in our world, we truthfully are enamored with that. But in the real world of what we're trying to do is we need it to be evidence-based, right? You need it to be have a study and get it with the right people, and that's why I feel uh, pretty honored and humbled that a couple of researchers that I hold in high regards are interested enough to discuss possibilities of how do we try to strategically put this in place to collect numbers, because it is so different. Like I said, there is no chart. Just move the bar fast. Like, how does that change the force? Like I was saying, like there's going to be a change in force, but I think the real research is how the athlete is psychologically.
That's what I was going to say, because you talked about with fight, and it's like, are we putting these governors? Are we putting on a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, okay, you're going to be at that, 0.3. Anecdotally, again, I was doing hand-supported back squats with chains. I was hitting 450 with 2 chains each side, and my average velocity was point 0.3 or 2. I don't think it would have been that high if I wasn't measuring on my my Vitruve app was telling me audibly the peak velo, but at the same time it was measuring the average so I could see it when I was done with my rep.
And that's same with us.
So it's telling me like 0.7, and so it was driving my intent more versus me being like, all right, I think I'm going to be around here because that's what the research said. Now me putting my nerdy research hat on, it's like, yeah, if you get all these coaches that can, kind of standardize, and you take away the name of the person, but it's athlete ABC, whatever, figure out their anthropometrics, you can figure out their heights. And then that's where you can start to figure out like, okay, when you prescribe and measure peak velo, but also have average there, how does the average change? And you compare it to it, and then you see if it's statistically significant.
Because like one of the things that I want to see too is
TeamBuildr has been my trusted source for online software programs for my athletes since 2019. Since then, they've continued to grow. They have this new practice integration where practice planning can integrate with the sport coach. You have your sports science, your AMS, the questionnaires. They've continued to evolve and keep giving you the things that you need. It has made my life easier as a strength coach. I want the same for you. You do not need to keep printing on lift cards. Please, printing on lift cards in Excel, you don't need to do that. If you need help being able to purchase it, they have a pre-written grant on their website. They're also part owners in the Plyomat with Coach Rich Burnett. So if you need to get a good device that can accurately and validly and quickly get your jump height and ground contact time, so now you can get RSI, Plyomat's a great choice. We utilize that at Goldfinch. Check TeamBuildr. Check them out in the link down below. Please stop printing on lift cards. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make your athlete's life easier. It's easier to program on the back end. Check out TeamBuildr in the link down below.
The differences in average to peak as the loads continue to increase, because it's going to close. Like I've had some deadlifts in my own training where the peak was like 0.3.
Holy cow, yeah.
And the average was like 0.19. I mean,
Yep.
So that's when you know, okay, you're probably at max effort. But I'll tell you what, so now I'm going to have to steal your term. You might have hit the term of all terms when you said we're putting governors on these athletes. Like, I think that's what when you're training for average ranges, that literally to me says, why are you putting a governor on this school bus that can go 100 miles an hour, but you really only want it to go 65? And that's the truth. Why are we putting governors on this guy to say, hey, let's train between 0.5 and 0.6 at 80%, rather than saying, let's see how fast you can move 80% for multiple sets under this rest period.
and hold it, like you said, because
And then see how long, see how long you can go. And what it will tell us is how our field work is corresponding to our strength work. Because if I'm going to run multiple high level sprints during a field session, the ultimate goal would be, again, to maintain the highest level of relative intensity for each rep. So the question, it's just like the old Springfield test in some ways, where you ran 1640s within 0.5 of your best 40 time. And the goal was, how well can you maintain your conditioning? Because again, they didn't know I don't know the whole behind the Springfield test, but my point is, if you can run 1640s within 0.5 of your best 40 time, you're probably in good shape. Yep. And that's when we went into cluster testing. If I can maintain 85 to 88% of my best 1RM for 15 singles with a 35-second beep or higher, I think my guy's going to have the confidence that know that he's in the fourth quarter, he'll play stronger longer. And that's where I think we've lost. This is where we're letting technology not get that mental front. See, at the end of the day, it's 100% about the psychological aspect of the game. Yep. We cannot take away from the competition of it. So if I train my athlete to be mental, to have the mental fortitude and resiliency to know that, man, I just did a new max after 15 clusters, there's no way the guy that I'm going to play against is going to be able to handle me in the fourth quarter, or if it's a 15-play drive. But I don't know that if I got tired at rep 10 and you start deloading my weights instead of increasing my weights. And this is where I wish I would have used, like I said, I've always said, I don't know who the first one was, but the first person who actually started using the velocity-based work or tendos or whatever device you use, obviously the first we were aware of was tendos, yep, and started tracking the heavy days, not just the dynamic days. We owe that person a lot of credit. That's the one thing. I don't have regrets, because what we were doing when we did it was what we knew, right? But boy, if I had that data when we were training college football players, that kind of would make me as dangerous as I always said if I had GPS for my conditioning programs for college football players. And again, it goes back to, hey, are you willing to take what's readily available to you, knowing there's validity to it, but how do you push that validity to make it even more conceptually conducive to success in a repetitive situation as team sports are, as well as strength sports that have multiple disciplines. I mean, when you look at CrossFit and you look at strongman, it's kind of strength decathlons. So there is a conditioning effect to it. Like the biggest thing about day one to day is, hey, you could have a great day one, but how do you wake up the next morning to go to day two? Yeah, I mean, so, and it's the same thing with anything else. It's just like track and field. Hey, I had a great prelim, but am I conditioned enough to come back and run the semis and the finals? Because no one cares if I PR in the prelim and I don't make the finals. So this is where there's and this is where, again, concurrent sequencing is the key to athletics. I know people talk about block system, linear this, but the truth is, if you threw all your programming, and this is why I term the term intermixed periodization, because if you took your template right now, look the way that you schedule, say, a 12-week cycle, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see linear-based stuff. You're going to see Charlie Francis vertical integration stuff. You're going to see concurrent sequencing stuff. You're going to see block stuff. And if you're varying your exercises every mesocycle, you're going to see conjugated stuff. So in the end, everybody can jump on a bandwagon, but I can guarantee you, if you got 3 quality strength coaches with a high level of programming experience and they broke down your program, you're an intermixed periodized program when it comes to strength, not a periodization of the annual plan. That's calendar based. Like, I think there's 2 different periodizations when it comes to that. And that's why I think a lot of times people, when they say death to periodization, Uh, in some respects, there's truth to that, and depending on the levels, but it depends on what you said. I don't think there's ever going to be death to periodization when it comes to the calendar plan, because you have to have a calendar.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to periodization of certain programming, the way the calendar sets up, at the pro level, there's 100% no periodization when it comes to periodization of strength. But you still got to build the calendar, because there's certain parts of the year where this is how they have to train to get to this phase. But the only, again, I mean, I can go on for days and days. I just know that my ultimate goal at this point is to relay information that comes across my table to individuals like you with a strong network and a strong reach to coaches, and hopefully we spark enough interest that people are willing to dive a little bit out of the comfort zones and take a shot at something that may have tremendous value to improving what you already are doing. Like, this isn't about this is better than velocity based training as we know it. But if it's velocity based training with a cherry on top and everything you know gets better, why wouldn't that have value when the ultimate goal is to create a program and create an environment that the athlete succeeds? Because we all know, we all get credit for things we accomplished really on what the athlete was able to accomplish for us. Now all of a sudden I'm a great strongman coach because Thomas Evans hits the podium of a heavy meet, versus I wasn't a very good strongman coach when Brian Shaw doesn't win the 5th title of the world's strongest man. I mean, and again, I've learned a lot. Brian helped me a lot. Like, and I've said, what I learned now, the programming template I now have for strongman, I'm not saying it would have been better or worse, because Brian was a totally different athlete to work with, but I've got a strongman template for high level strongman that's dialed in now. Like, my affirmation, confirmation, and confidence, especially working with a high level assistant coach who programs for high level strongman themselves, is at an all time level, and that's my drive now. Like, I'm in a different world. So what challenges me now, and that template is totally different than the tier system because it's a totally different sport. So I had to rethink everything. But the great thing about the tier system is
Dasher has completely changed the game for how I'm able to time my athletes, whether I'm doing ACL, max velo, or curvilinear running. Had the blues, had the blacks at Goldfinch. Now that I have the silvers, this has saved me so much time in setup, breakdown if I'm going from Ankeny to Huxley, or from Ankeny to the Nevada location, or Nevada to Huxley. Like, wherever I got to go time athletes, it has made my ability to go from one place to another so much easier with the silvers. Strength coaches that have to go from one field to the other, or from the field to the court, this will help you save time. Now, in the spirit of saving time, you also have the ability to have an API interaction with TeamBuildr, so now you can see all the data on the back end. Seeing data on the back end, Dasher has a free app, a player profile app, that will allow athletes to see their data. Over 6,000 coaches and athletes have done so. And if you want more than just the timing gates, if you check them out in the link down below, they have solutions to help you out with vertical jump, broad jump, RSI, all that. Check them out in the link down below.
we use that for our general prep to get ready for meets. Because again, what is strongman? It's a total body, whole body sport, no different than football or any sport that we train. So there is a times when I can sneak in a little tier system to keep things fresh for the guys, and then it goes back into meat and potatoes time to work. But again, I can continue to just talk the same talk. All I ask is, like I say, absorb, modify, apply, and I want to be someone who stimulates thought. Like, hey, just think about it, right? Like, I'm not telling you to, oh damn man, House just spent 50 minutes with Coach Lima on the Strength Coach Network talking about how we should dump everything. I never said dump it. I'm saying this is a consideration to me that just makes common sense, right? Like, we keep talking about we need to develop the most explosive athlete we can. But again, I'll use your term, but we're putting governors on them in the weight room. And then want to say, well, these aren't transferring over. Well, of course they're not. You're not asking them to transfer.
I like what you did by sneaking in a consistent, I think it was a 10 doubles or 12 doubles, and they all had to be at the same. It was the 12 doubles, now that I'm saying
Yeah,
it.
the stable set.
That was the stable stuff over the weeks, and that's kind of the Coach Bondarchuk, like, hey, we're going to keep one thing stable to see how the system, how the athlete adapts over time and adapts to, like, that's your independent variable. Talk about that to coaches, because I think that's something that, like you said today, in pro sports where maybe it is more triage than actually periodization, but like finding a stable thing to be able to evaluate over time, even if it's 3 weeks, there is a ton of value in that.
Yeah, I think again it goes back to the repetitiveness of sport, right? And it goes back to the challenges of the metabolic demands of any sport when it comes to conditioning. And if you look at it from the standpoint of those who don't believe in long distance conditioning yardage, like those who don't believe in gassers, 300-yard shuttles, and 110s for football players, well, 12 doubles with a 2-minute turn, or even if you want to go to a minute, well, that's the same type of conditioning you're doing if you're doing repeat 20s.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yep.
for me, the test was, and as we talked about, the mental fatigue of doing 12 doubles with short rests with the same load, trying to maintain the same level of speed, is much more demanding mentally than doing a 5x5 climb or an 8x3 climb. And that's the key is, so it's a combination of a test of your capabilities of power capacity under a strenuous load that was determined by your own previous data with a marginal rest period based on your sport, because that 12 doubles, now in this particular phase, I would keep it at a 2-minute turn. So you're really getting probably uh, total rest, probably 140 by the time you re-rack and rack a weight, especially for a squat. Deadlift maybe a little bit more, bench maybe a little bit more. For a squat, it's a little bit tougher because you have dead work. Like that work counts, it's stress, but you got to walk in and out. I may push it to a minute, may not, because we were used to doing on the minute stuff. And those to me, that capability to me shows the more confidence than the push set.